number of unaccompanied children is part of the humanitarian crisis. These are children whose parents decided to send them alone on a very, very dangerous journey at the hands of, most often, smugglers and coyotes or traffickers into the United States. What we hear from the Northern Triangle governments, they have said this publicly, I am sure that they will tell you when you visit them, is they want their children back. Our laws uniquely allow us to send Mexican children back home after they have gone through a process and do not have a legal right to stay. But under the law, we cannot send children from other countries back, except for Mexico and Canada. So the Northern Triangle governments have said to us, they will say to you, please send us our children back. We want them reunited with our families and communities here. We don't want the smugglers to be able to convince parents to send their children on this perilous journey where they are absolutely victims of violence and abused. As you know, sir, very unfortunately, because of the increase in violence at ICE, when we have families with children, we have to give every girl a pregnancy test over 10. This is not a safe journey. So I ask again that we change the law, we treat all children the same, and we afford them the opportunity to go back home if they have no legal right to be in the United States. The other part of this that I think we need to do is we need to find a way to be able to keep families together. Families need to be able to be kept together, go through the process. If they have a legal right to stay, we will welcome them here. If they don't have a legal right to stay, the most humanitarian thing to do is to remove them efficiently and effectively. Both of those changes we need from Congress.
Do you believe that we are that there is a crisis on our southern border, that there is a national security and humanitarian crisis at our southern border? And do you believe that the President of the United States was justified in declaring a national emergency?
Ma'am, it is an emergency. As the Secretary of Homeland Security, I can no longer assure you of who is coming into this country. That is a direct national security threat. We are on par to have over 900,000 this year. First of all. Second of all, I have seen the vulnerable populations. I have been to Mexico. I have talked to the Northern Triangle countries. This is a true humanitarian crisis that the system is enabling. We have to change the laws.
I think it's really important, continuing what Congresswoman Slotkin was talking about making the record very clear and not allowing any misleading statements. It was a policy announced by the Attorney General of this country that families were going to be separated. That was a policy. He did not say we're going to start enforcing a law. It was a policy by this administration that only ended when there were pictures of little kids in cages that had been ripped away from their parents. So I think it's really important, Madam Secretary, that you talk about it and you use the right language. This was not the law, okay? This was a policy that the Attorney General of this country announced was a new policy that they were going to rip kids away from their parents. So I think it's very important that the record reflect that, and I thank my colleague, Ms. Slotkin, and I yield back.
Okay, so respectfully, sir, I would like to respond to that because that's...
Well, let me just say, do it in writing so we won't have the confusion.
I would like to respond quickly because I can tell you...
No, gentle lady, we've been back and forth.
We have, but it's appropriate for me to clarify for the record because I think you're trying to get to the truth. I think that's what you were too. So I just want to just quickly say that the AG memo that was issued directed all U.S. attorney offices along the southwest border to prosecute all adults who were referred for prosecution. That's what it did.
That's a policy.
But
that is a policy.
It's not as you described it,
Madam Secretary, that is a policy. When you knew that that policy was going to result in children having to be taken away from their parents. That's a policy. You should admit it.
The consequence of any adult going to jail in this country is they're separated from their child. That wasn't the point of it. The point was to increase prosecutions for those breaking the law and not exempt any class of aliens.
Okay.
That's
Madam
what
Secretary,
the AG
it was
directed.
very clear what the Attorney General meant.
Are we still using cages for children?
Sir, we don't use cages for children. In the border facilities that you've been to, they were not made to detain children. As the children are processed through, they are in subparts of those facilities.
Madam Secretary?
Yes, I'm being as clear as I can, sir. Respectfully, I'm trying to answer your question.
Yes or no, are we still putting children in cages.
To my knowledge, CBP never purposely put a child in a cage if you mean a cage like this.
Purposely or whatever, are we putting children in cages as of today?
Children are processed at the border facility stations that you've been at. Some of the
And I've seen the
areas-
cages. I just want you to admit that the cages exist.
Sir, they're not cages.
What are
They're
they?
Areas of the border facility that are carved out for the safety and protection of those who remain there while they're being processed. If we have two gangs, we separate them into separate areas of
no,
that facility. If
Ma-
we have
Madam
a father
Sec-
and
Madam
daughter, we
Secretary,
separate that from another son.
We're not going to go through the semantics. Now, I saw the cyclone fences that were made as cages, and you did too. All you have to do is admit it. If it's a bad policy, then change it. But don't mislead the
Sir, there's-
committee. Do not mislead the committee.
Madam Secretary, what happened to give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore? Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. What happened? Madam Secretary, asylees are not illegals. Madam Secretary, do you know the number of people who came through Ellis Island?
No, sir, not.
I do. 12 million. Do you know where they came from?
All over the world.
I do. Germany, Ireland, Britain, Scandinavian countries, Southern and Eastern Europe. They were not illegals. There was no flotilla in New York Harbor to prevent them from coming to Ellis Island. There was no family separation at Ellis Island. Past administrations have, when asylees were trying to get to this country, found ways to accommodate asylees. They didn't build walls. When the Cubans were fleeing Castro, we created wet foot, dry foot. 1 foot on dry land, and you could walk on in to a pathway to citizenship. Madam Secretary, do you know who Scarface is?
I'm sorry.
I'll tell you. Al Capone, the son of Italian immigrants. Not all of those people who came through Ellis Island were saints. Scarface was a bootlegger, dealt in prostitution, gambling, one of the greatest criminals this country's ever suffered, the son of immigrants. It's unfortunate. I would never want a Scarface in our country. I don't want MS-13 in our country. But I also don't want to see a wall as a solution to a humanitarian crisis. Madam Secretary, these Border Patrol agents are also victims. The children, but the agents are victims too, because they are required to enforce a corrupt policy, a policy that separates babies from their mothers, places them in cages. I was at the border. I saw those babies locked up on top of each other. We would not treat animals. The Humane Society wouldn't allow it, the way those babies were treated. Madam Secretary, they are victims. You have all of these vacancies in part because a good many people don't want to be a part of that kind of circumstance. They're victims too. The children are victims, and the people who are forced to do what they are doing to these babies are victims too. Madam Secretary, here is the problem. We have surpassed our color quota. There are those who believe that we already have too many people of color in this country. And these, one of whom happens to be the President of the United States of America, would institute policies that will prevent people of color from coming to this country. White babies would not be treated the way these babies of color are being treated, Madam Secretary. This is about color. We've opened our doors. You're tired, you're poor. Huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Except we now have our quota of people of color. I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Sir, if I could just respond to a couple things.
Mr. Chairman, if she responds, I'd like to have the opportunity to respond to her response.
Well, gentleman made statements. He really didn't ask any questions. So in interest of time, we're going